They say you should never accept dinner invitations from strangers. Sound advice, right? Especially when the invitation isn't printed on fancy cardstock, but meticulously carved into a thin, polished piece of, well, bone. It arrived yesterday, no return address, just my name, an address deep in the old country hills, and the words, an exclusive Harrington family supper. Attendance compulsory. Compulsory. That was the first red flag. I should have thrown it away, burned it maybe. The manor was immense, like something ripped from a Gothic nightmare. Dark stone, sharp angles, windows like vacant eyes staring out into the oppressive twilight. It loomed over the landscape, isolated, wrapped in this unnerving silence. No crickets, no birdsong, just the crunch of my tires on the overgrown driveway. Parking my beat-up sedan near a fountain choked with dead leaves felt almost disrespectful, like parking a clown car at a state funeral. The butler, Lurch I mentally nicknamed him, led me wordlessly down a long, echoing hallway. Oil paintings lined the walls, mostly severe-looking ancestors with cold, calculating eyes that seemed to follow me as I passed. Their faces all shared a certain sharpness. High cheekbones, pointed chins, a predatory stillness. The Harrington look, I presumed. The floorboards groaned under my weight, complaining about the intrusion. We finally reached a pair of imposing double doors. Lurch pushed them open, revealing the dining room. And oh, it was something. A massive mahogany table dominated the space, set for about a dozen people with gleaming silverware, crystal glasses, and disturbingly ornate bone china plates. Towering candelabras dripping wax provided the only light, casting dancing shadows that made the room feel alive and threatening. Seated at the table were the Harringtons. "Ah, Mr. Davies, welcome," the old man, Mr. Harrington, finally rasped. His voice was dry like rustling parchment. "Do join us. We were just about to begin." He gestured to an empty seat near the middle of the table. There were other guests, maybe 4 or 5, already seated. They looked uncomfortable. Shifty eyes, nervous little movements. A couple nodded weakly at me, but mostly they kept their gazes fixed on their empty plates or the flickering candle flames. Lurch reappeared, silent as ever, carrying a silver tureen. He began ladling a thick, dark broth into our bowls. The aroma that rose was unusual, rich, meaty, but with an undertone I couldn't quite place. Slightly sweet, maybe, but also faintly gamey. I glanced at the other guests. One woman sniffed tentatively at her bowl, her brow furrowed. Another man picked up his spoon but hesitated before taking a bite. Conversation, such as it was, remained stilted. The Harringtons spoke mainly amongst themselves, quiet references to Uncle Theodore's contribution and Aunt Eliza's preferred seasoning. It felt deliberately exclusive, designed to make the rest of us feel like outsiders, which we absolutely were. I tried to engage the man next to me, asking him how he knew the Harringtons. He just mumbled something about a mutual acquaintance and went back to nervously shredding his bread roll. The soup bowls were cleared away by Lurch, his movements as silent and economical as ever. There was an awkward pause, filled only by the ticking clock and the anxious breathing of some guests. Then the main course arrived. Lurch carried in a massive silver platter covered by a domed lid. The sheer size of it was intimidating. He placed it in the center of the table with a soft thud. Mr. Harrington rubbed his hands together, his icy eyes gleaming. Lurch lifted the lid. Underneath wasn't a roasted pig or a side of beef as you might expect on such a grand platter. It was a roast, definitely a roast. Large, golden brown, glistening slightly under the candlelight. But the shape was wrong. Too lean in places, too rounded in others. It was expertly carved, arranged artfully with some kind of dark, glistening glaze and garnished with herbs, but there was an undeniable, horrifying familiarity to the general form. It looked vaguely. My mind was racing, trying to process the impossible, the unthinkable. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of sick joke, an elaborate prank by bored, twisted aristocrats. But the looks on the Harringtons' faces, the genuine hunger there, the way Mrs. Harrington appraised the roast with proprietary pride, the way the son subtly licked his lips. It wasn't a joke. The other guests seemed paralyzed by the same horrified realization. I had to get out. Adrenaline surged through me, cold and sharp. Forget politeness, forget the bone invitation, forget everything except survival. I pushed my chair back abruptly, the legs scraping loudly on the wooden floor, shattering the awful silence. I'm feeling unwell," I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. I need some air. I stood up, my legs shaking. For a split second, nobody moved. The Harringtons just watched me, their expressions unchanging, almost amused. My eyes darted around the room, desperately seeking another exit. There were tall windows, draped in heavy velvet curtains, but they were likely locked or barred from the outside on the ground floor of a place like this. There was another door, smaller, perhaps leading to the kitchens or a pantry, partially obscured by a large, ornate cabinet. It was my only chance. Before anyone could react further, I lunged towards it. It happened in a blur. I was in some kind of service corridor or pantry. Utter blackness surrounded me, thick with the smell of cold stone, stale air, and something else. That same sweetish, coppery smell, only much, much stronger here. Rancid. My hands scrabbled against damp, cold stone walls, searching for a light switch, another door, a weapon, anything. The pounding on the door I'd come through intensified, punctuated by the younger Harrington's calm, chilling voice calling my name. Mr. Davies. Panic turned into pure, primal terror. I stumbled back, gagging, crashing into shelves stacked with jars. Pickled. Things floated in murky brine, things I didn't want to identify. The pounding on the door stopped. A key scraped in the lock. They were coming in. I scanned the room wildly. Another door, heavier, metal at the far end. A cellar door, freezer. I didn't care. I scrambled towards it, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The page detailed Harrington family supper traditions. It wasn't just about eating. It listed names, dates, details of preparation. Guest preparations. My blood ran cold. Then I saw the most recent entry dated today. It wasn't a recipe, it was a guest list. There were the names of the nervous people at the table. And then at the bottom, under the heading main course candidate, my name, Davies. And below that, scrawled hastily in fresher ink, designated successor. You ever get that feeling, deep in your gut, where primal instinct just screams that something is terribly wrong? Mine hit the second the engine choked and died. Middle of nowhere, of course. Just happened to coast to a stop right under this rotting wooden sign, half swallowed by vines. It read, "Welcome to Lost Creek. Population, kindly. Kindly, that's not a number. That's weird." The silence out here was deafening, heavier than any city noise. Lost Creek looked like it had been holding its breath for 50 years. Main Street was just still. Peeling paint on the storefronts, windows thick with grime, weeds cracking the sidewalks. Not a soul in sight. Felt like walking through a photograph of a ghost town, except the air felt thick, expectant. The only light came from a buzzing neon sign ahead that just flickered diner. It cast this sickly pale glow on the dusty pavement. Every step I took echoed way too loud, bouncing off the silent buildings. The diner door creaked open like something out of a bad movie, the little bell above barely managing a rusty tinkle. Inside, it was painfully bright, fluorescent tubes overhead humming aggressively, casting everything in a stark, sterile light. Sat down at the counter. Red vinyl stools, cracked in places. The counter itself had these dark, brownish stains near the edge, scrubbed but still visible, like old blood maybe. A woman shuffled out from the back. I wasn't alone for long. Two others were already there, tucked away in a back booth, didn't see them at first. A man and a woman sitting unnervingly still, plates in front of them half full of something lumpy and reddish. They weren't eating, not really, just sort of pushing it around with their forks. And they were both staring right at me. Not curious glances, but fixed, hungry stares, like I was the entertainment, or maybe the next course. I forced a smile, tried to sound casual, explained about the car, asked about a mechanic. The waitress slowly shook her head. "I'll Jeb. He ain't around much these days. Went up the mountain, won't be back till Thursday, maybe Friday." My heart sank. That was 3 days away. "Town's got a motel, though," she added, her voice maybe a little too eager now. "Right down the street. Martha'll fix you up a room." The couple in the booth shifted slightly, their heads turning in perfect sync, still staring. Motel sign buzzed fitfully. MTL, some letters dead. Looked even more rundown than the rest of the town. Check-in was a cramped little office smelling of stale cigarettes and disinfectant. The woman behind the counter, Martha presumably, was cut from the same cloth as the diner waitress. Thin, pale, watchful eyes that didn't blink nearly enough. She just handed me a key, a real metal key on a dirty plastic tag, number 7. Didn't ask for ID, didn't ask for payment up front. Sleep, forget it. Lay there on that lumpy mattress, fully clothed, heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. Every creak of the old building, every rustle outside the thin walls sounded like footsteps. Around maybe 2 a.m. I heard it clearly. A scraping sound, like something heavy being dragged across gravel just outside my door. Then shuffling, slow, deliberate footsteps, more than one pair. And underneath it all, that same sound from the diner. Chew, chew. Morning came, grey and cheerless. Forced myself out of the room. The town square was just as deserted as yesterday, if not more so. Sunlight did nothing to make it less creepy, just illuminated the decay more clearly. Saw a notice board near what looked like a collapsed town hall, covered in faded posters. Missing, they read. Different faces, mostly young people, tourists maybe, dating back years. Their smiles looked out of place in this dead town. Most unsettling, there were no kids, not one. Down a side alley I found it, a butcher's shop. Meats and sundries painted fadedly on the window. Curiosity, or maybe stupidity, pulled me closer. Flies buzzed lazily against the dirty glass pane. Inside, through the grime, I could see a display case. The cuts of meat weren't right. Too large, oddly shaped, the color a deep, dark, unsettling red, almost purple in the dim light filtering in. Definitely not beef or pork. Needed to think, needed air that didn't smell like decay, and that other thing. Headed towards the edge of town where the woods pressed in close. Thought maybe I could find a path out, follow the woods around instead of using the main road. Near the tree line, something snagged my eye, a flash of color against the dull brown leaves and dirt. It was a shoe, a hiker's boot, relatively new-looking but muddy and scuffed, lying on its side near a bush with broken branches, and next to it, the earth was disturbed. Walking back towards the dreadful motel, trying to look casual, like I hadn't just found evidence of God knows what, I almost bumped into one of them. An old man, thin as a rake, sitting on a decaying porch bench, whittling a stick with jerky movements. He looked up as I passed, his eyes, those same flat, ancient eyes, fixing on me. I forced myself to speak, asked him again about the road, maybe an alternate route out, anything. Dinner time was approaching. The sky was darkening again, that oppressive twilight returning. I was holed up in my motel room, trying to jam the flimsy chair under the doorknob when there was a soft knock. My blood ran cold, didn't answer. Another knock, firmer this time. Then the waitress's raspy voice muffled through the wood. "Mr. Henderson, town's having a bit of a potluck tonight, down at the old hall, community gathering. We'd be pleased if you joined us." Screw the potluck. Adrenaline surged. Waited till her footsteps faded, then ripped the chair away. Slipped out the back window, luckily it wasn't nailed shut. Hit the damp ground, scrambled into the tree line behind the motel. Dense woods, pitch black now, tripped over roots, branches tore at my clothes. My plan, circle around, hit the main road far beyond the town limits. But it was weird. No matter which way I turned, which path I thought I was taking, I kept seeing familiar shapes. Might as well walk into the lion's den. Stumbled out of the woods right by the community hall. It was an old wooden building, paint long gone, windows glowing yellow from within. The low murmur of voices spilled out, punctuated by occasional sharp laughter that sounded wrong. Took a deep breath, pushed the creaking door open. The entire town seemed to be packed inside, all of them, standing around, plates in hand, talking quietly. But the moment I stepped in, silence fell. She reached for the lid of the big dish. Time seemed to slow down. I saw the butcher near the back, wiping his hands on his apron. Saw the old man from the porch nodding slowly. This was it. But as her fingers touched the handle, something primal screamed inside me. Not fear, rage, survival. Grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy glass water pitcher from a side table, and hurled it. It crashed against the wall, shattering. Chaos erupted. A moment's confusion. That was all I needed. You ever get an invitation, deep down, you shouldn't accept? That's how it felt when the letter arrived. Thick, creamy envelope, fancy script. From my great-aunt Alara and Uncle Silas. Hadn't seen them since I was maybe 5. They lived way out, isolated, somewhere off County Road 12. Mom always got quiet when their names came up, just said they were. Traditional. The invite was for dinner, Sunday evening. Seemed weirdly formal, stressed punctuality and proper attire. The drive took forever. The paved road giving way to gravel, then dirt. The sun was setting, painting everything this sick orange color. The house finally appeared, this big old Victorian thing rising out of the trees like a rotten tooth. Way bigger than I remembered, windows like dark eyes. Uncle Silas was waiting on the porch, silhouetted against the light spilling from the doorway. He looked unchanged. Inside, the house smelled strange. Not bad exactly, but thick, like old potpourri dust and something else underneath. Something metallic, almost coppery. Great Aunt Alara glided out of a shadowed doorway. She was small, bird-like, wrapped in lace and velvet that seemed to swallow her whole. Her smile, though, it was huge. Too wide, stretched tight across her pale face, showing slightly too many teeth. "Daniel, darling boy, look at you all grown up." It led me into the dining room. Jesus, the dining room. Massive oak table, polished to a dark gleam, set with heavy silverware and crystal glasses that looked like they hadn't been used since the invention of electricity. A huge, covered serving dish sat ominously in the center. The only light came from a single bare bulb hanging low over the table, swinging almost imperceptibly, casting these jerky, dancing shadows. It made Alara and Silas look skeletal, their features sharp and exaggerated. "We're so pleased you could join our little tradition, Daniel," Alara said, her voice smooth as oil. "It's been too long since we had fresh company." She picked up a silver serving fork, tapping it lightly against the table. Ting, ting. Silas just watched me, his expression completely flat, like he was studying an insect. "Tradition?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom never mentioned any family traditions." Alara laughed, a high, thin sound that didn't reach her eyes. Silas reached forward, placing his long, bony hands on the lid of the serving dish. "We pride ourselves on sourcing only the finest ingredients," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Locally sourced, you understand. Freshness is paramount." He paused, looking from me to Alara, a flicker of something anticipation in his eyes. I could feel sweat trickling down my back. My mouth was dry. I wanted to make an excuse, say I felt sick, just get up and run. But I was frozen. With excruciating slowness, Silas lifted the lid. Steam billowed out, carrying that strange smell, stronger now. Rich, savory, but with that coppery undertone like iron. Under the lid wasn't a turkey or a ham. It was a roast. Darkly browned, glistening with juices, nestled in a bed of roasted root vegetables. But the shape, it was wrong. Too small for a typical roast and oddly proportioned. Long. "Our guest of honor serves first," Alara chirped, gesturing towards me with a serving spoon. Her eyes glittered. Silas held the carving knife poised over the roast, his gaze locked on mine, waiting. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. My mind was screaming, sirens blaring, but my body was paralyzed. I stared at the thing on the platter. The skin was crackled perfectly, like pork rind. I saw a glint of something near the knuckle end, almost hidden by a sprig of rosemary. I shot back from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the floor, the noise echoing in the silence. I can't," I stammered, my voice shaking. "I'm feeling really unwell. I need to go." Alara's smile didn't falter, but her eyes hardened. "Nonsense, Daniel, just first-time nerves. It's quite delicious, you'll see. Rich in iron." Silas lowered the knife slowly. "Leaving now would be impolite," he said, his voice low and menacing. "And wasteful." Didn't wait. I turned and bolted. I yanked open the heavy dining room door and sprinted into the dimly lit hallway, the smell of dust and that other awful scent chasing me. Behind me I heard Silas's voice, calm but carrying. "Alara, dear, our guest seems to prefer a different course." Then Alara's high-pitched, chilling laughter echoed through the house. It wasn't amusement, it was excitement, predatory. I fumbled with the heavy front door lock, my fingers slick with sweat. It was bolted. Giving up on the door, I ran deeper into the house, searching for another way out. Kitchen, back door, window. The layout was a maze of shadowed rooms filled with antique furniture draped in white sheets like rows of corpses. Everywhere that thick, cloying smell. In what looked like a study, I saw it. A large, ornate fireplace. And beside it, a set of heavy, old fireplace tools. Tongs, a shovel, and a poker. A long, thick iron poker with a pointed tip. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. I crept towards the back of the house, poker held ready. Past a locked pantry door. Something was scratching faintly behind it. Decided instantly I didn't want to know what. Found the kitchen. It was huge, industrial almost, but disturbingly clean. Stainless steel counters gleamed unnaturally under another one of those single, flickering bulbs. But there were stains. Suddenly, Silas was there, standing in the doorway I'd just come through, blocking my retreat. He wasn't holding the carving knife anymore. He held something else, a pair of antique, heavy-looking manacles. He didn't speak, just started walking towards me slowly, deliberately. His eyes seemed almost pitying. No, not pity, resignation. Like this was just the inevitable conclusion. I gripped the poker tighter, backing away towards the far end of the kitchen. There had to be a back door, a window. There was no choice. I lunged, not at Silas with his manacles, but at Elara. She seemed frailer, the weaker link. I swung the heavy poker wildly, aiming for the doorway for escape. She shrieked, dropping the rope, stumbling back surprised by the sudden aggression. But Silas moved faster than I thought possible. He tackled me from the side, his wiry strength shocking. We crashed to the floor, the poker clattering away across the tiles. They dragged me, manacled, not upstairs, not outside, but towards a heavy door off the kitchen I hadn't noticed, a cellar door. Silas opened it, revealing steep, dark stairs leading down into blackness. The smell that wafted up, stagnant, decaying, intensely metallic, made me gag. Elara patted my cheek, her touch like dry paper. "Don't you worry, dear boy," she cooed, her smile back, wider than ever. "We won't start carving immediately. You need to age a little, develop flavor."